Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics. I'm your host, David Harper, and joining me today is the artist of the Image Comics series, Snotgirl. It's Leslie Hung. Thanks for coming on, Leslie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I want to start with a recent event for you. I know you just returned from TCAF, the Toronto Comics Arts Festival, and I know that's like a big deal, which we'll get to later on. But I've always been curious about it. It's widely considered to be one of the best con experiences around. How was that for you?
I always liked TCAF. It's kind of one of those shows where I feel like I don't really know. It has like a different vibe from most shows, but I think it might be because it's like at a library. It's free admission. There's like tons of events, and they always have really good guests.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's really solid. Like I've been going since 2013, I think, and it's kind of what got me more into comics, more or less.
Was it?
Is there a reason why you've never? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no. I was just gonna say, is the reason why it got you more into comics? Is it kind of like you found people that kind of had common interests to you, and like you found more of like a world that spoke to you in comics?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I think I went in just because I wanted to hang out with my friends, and then I met a bunch of people. I actually met Brian at my first TCAF,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of helped me. It like meeting all those people, like the people whose books I had started reading, and like seeing them in person and getting even more books was it's just like a huge motivator. Like it every time I go, I feel very invigorated to make more work,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like there's a lot of really good energy, and it's generally really positive, I think, as opposed to like a lot of comic shows where it kind of feels like a little stuffy, and like there are a lot of lines, and you don't really get to interact with people as naturally, I think.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite things from this year's TCAF, just as an outsider, I knew you were about to ask me about like why I've never been. I live in Anchorage,
Hmm.
Alaska. Nothing is very
Oh, okay.
yeah. There's not a lot close to us. So like TCAF is one of those things. Like TCAF and Heroes Con and Thought Bubble are like the three shows that I really want to go to.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, like those seem like widely considered. Like you know how there's some shows where it's like kind of more of a pop culture show, like San
Hmm.
Diego, and then there's ones that are kind of like hybrids. Like I really like Emerald City Comic Con. It's a really great show, and it's still pretty comic centric, but it still has a lot of like media stuff there. But it's like
Hmm.
TCAF and Heroes and Thought Bubble kind of feel like the most pure comic cons at this point.
That that makes sense to me as well. I've never been to Thought Bubble. I think I'm going this year for the first
Ooh.
time. So I guess we'll see.
But what I was going to say is like one of the things I thought was awesome from TCAF this year is it seemed like I know Inio Asano was there and everybody was like
Hmm.
sharing pictures that they took with him.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was cool seeing comic creators I love like fanboying out about somebody else.
Yeah. I love that about it just because I feel like they can just get so many different types of creators that you wouldn't typically see at a comic show.
Hmm.
Just like tons of people from out of the country, and like making people that make comics that aren't even in English, like Inio Asano, or a lot of like bande dessinée writers and artists.
Hmm.
It's kind of it's kind of like a hybrid. I think it's a little bit of a hybrid show, like in the sense that it's not like your typical comic show. It's not just indie comics, not just it's not just floppies. It's not just web comics. There's a bunch of different things going on.
Yeah, it feels like a melting pot of everything that makes comics great. Like I feel like I've never been to Angoulême either, but Angoulême seems really great,
Hmm.
especially because this year they had like a Naoki Urasawa exhibit, and that made me really, really,
I
really want to go.
know. I really wanted to go to that. Like, um, I just couldn't justify buying tickets to friends on the fly, but I was like, I really wish I could be going to
Yeah, oh,
that one day.
next time. I think I'd probably just start crying if I met him. I recently decided I've been reading. I just read Pluto. I don't know if you've ever read Pluto.
Oh my God, that's my favorite.
Oh my God,
Pluto's my favorite.
I read it. I was getting it from my library, and I was just getting them,
Hmm.
each volume at a time. And at a certain point, I was like, I'm just gonna get like volumes 5 through 9 because if I get to, or 5 through 8 because if I don't have them all now, I'd be upset with myself when I
It's
finish
so
one and I don't have the
good.
rest. It's really good. But
It's
anyways,
like I think that's my favorite from him, actually.
ooh, God, I think I love 20th Century Boys the most, but I it's just kind of hard to pick because they're all so good.
That's true.
I need to watch Man Ben. Have you ever watched Man Ben?
Yes, it's really good. It's like it's also one of those things. It's kind of like TCAF and like Monben are kind of those things that I look to just because I can get excited about comics again.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the time, when you're working a lot or you have a lot of things to do, it's kind of easy to get lost in that.
Yeah.
So like when I see other people working or I see like the ways that they do things, I don't know, it's like fun and interesting to me and like maybe a couple other people. Like I wouldn't say it's like super immersive for everyone, but I do think that there's a certain audience for it.
I do love that the like you were talking about how TCAF kind of reinvigorated you a bit. When you have a really good show, I always feel like creators kind of come out of it. Actually, not just creators. Like when I went to Emerald City this year, when I came back home,
Hmm.
I felt like I was like, I'm gonna do a million podcasts and write a ton of articles. I'm gonna do everything. It's just like
Yeah.
the energy that comes out of it is so great.
Yeah, it's like you get a really crazy high from it in a way, and then when you come back, you're like, I need to like hold on to this feeling so I can keep on going.
Exactly. Well, before we dive into Snotgirl, I want to talk a bit about your art background. I know that Snotgirl is like your first big comics project, but I want to talk about how you got there. I don't want to go all the way back, but I was curious. Like, you went to art school, right?
Yes, I did. I went to Art Center in Pasadena.
Mm.
It's like a design school, so yeah, I went in with very different intentions than what I came out with, I think.
What did you
Um,
intend to do, and what did you end up doing?
well, I was like fresh out of high school, and I basically went in with the intention like I just really want to draw. Like that's kind of been my thing for ever since I was a kid. I just wanted to draw a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have like a way to focus my energy. Like it was really difficult for me to try to like settle on something just because I don't know. I kind of have like especially back then I had an issue with committing to certain things. And so I started out and I wanted to do like Star Wars type matte paintings or something, which
Mm-hmm.
now that I look back on it, that's I don't really know what I was thinking. But basically I went to school for animation, visual development type work.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I left, I was like super like jaded and I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't like what I was doing. And it was kind of through like rediscovering that I really love comics that I kind of figured out that I really like the actual act of drawing and that I wanted to try doing comics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how it all started is that I was doing work that I didn't like and I decided to do work that I did like.
I feel like sometimes when it comes to not just comic people, but when you go to art school, sometimes it's almost like
Hmm.
you find out what you really don't like doing, and through process of elimination, you find out what you really do like doing. I'm not saying that that's what happened with you, but it seems like that happens sometimes. It's like you eliminate some of the stuff that maybe the thing that you wanted to do isn't what you end up doing because you realize when you get into it, it's not what you really want.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's kind of why it's hard for me to suggest art school or recommend people go to art school if they haven't done other things first. Like if you haven't had like a different type of job or you've really been pushed to a limit where you don't like what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard to put yourself in a realistic position about like where you are with your art and like what you excel at and what you could improve at and whether those things that you could improve at are things that are worth spending the time on, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. I mean, it's like I don't know. Like I always find that the whole college thing in general is really weird because
Hmm.
you go to 18, or you go to school at 18 or something when you graduate from high school, and then you're like, okay, I'm
Yeah,
going to define the direction for the rest of my life, and I'm like,
exactly.
I barely could dress myself when I was 18. How am I supposed to make these big sweeping life decisions?
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely a difficult thing for me to come to terms with. I think I just wanted to be like, I just wanted to do everything in a way, but also it's so clear to me now that I don't want to do everything. I want to do very specific things, and I think that there are certain things that I excel at and certain things I can improve on, but at the end of the day, it's like I don't want to be painting spaceships. I don't know why that was a thing that I thought I did want. But I mean, I at least I figured it out along the way, I guess.
It does, just to say about matte paintings, it seems theoretically awesome. I don't know about actual
Yeah.
application, but it seems theoretically awesome.
it looks cool,
Yeah.
and I think that's why I was like, yeah, that's probably the coolest thing I can do as an artist. But as I get older, I just realized that the coolest thing as an artist that you can be doing is just to be making your best work and being creative in your own way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what appealed to you about comics specifically as an artist?
I've just always liked comics. I think, especially when I was a kid, I wasn't really the type of kid to be making a ton of work. Like I did do like my kid comics, like the weird nonsensical like narratives that would just be unreadable to
Mm-hmm.
an actual audience. But I think I always kind of figured there was like too much work involved, and it's kind of true. But now it's a challenge that I'm willing to partake in.
Sure.
I just love that you can like convey so many emotions through a couple of drawings. Like obviously comics are hundreds and hundreds of drawings, and like there's a lot going on narratively and sequentially, but there's something about the medium that I think is still very exciting to me, even though like it's something I've grown up with. It's just not something that I've been making personally for my
Sure.
whole life.
I feel like there's something pure about it. It's like the idea. A lot of times, creators will tell me it's like if you want to, make comics, you just got to make comics. It's like you just start doing
Yeah.
it, and then like,
Mhm.
that was one thing I was curious about. Is like I know you made your own like kind of mini comics with like Secret and Baby and some other ones. How
Mhm.
what did those experiences teach you about the actual act of making comics?
That it's hard, or that it I guess hard is like the wrong word, but that it's challenging
Sure.
to to combine panels and words and drawings in a way that makes sense to an audience in a way that speaks to people.
Hmm.
And I think that's what's so interesting about it is that my interest in comics is largely like trying to get a reaction out of people in a way, like whether it's emotional or just they're like shocked at something. But I do think that I'm always trying to tap into like the emotional side of comics more or less
Hmm.
instead of action, I guess. Yeah, but I think the main thing I learned is just that I have to draw a lot faster, and it's kind of been this ongoing thing where I've been learning a lot about comics while doing them, and afterwards I'm like, I hope I can somehow integrate that into my workflow
Yeah.
next time. But
Yeah, I feel like I had a guy who works for Marvel. He's an artist named Russell Dodderman, and
mhm,
we were talking about his work and everything. And one of the things we were talking about, he used to do um, like character design for movies and stuff like that. He briefly did. He did like the Captain America: The First Avenger. He worked on that one, and
mhm,
he was talking about how it was kind of like lacking some of the stuff that he really likes. But it's like when you get into it, comics kind of combines all of those things. It says like you can do character design, you do storytelling, you do like all the character acting and everything like that. I mean,
yeah,
it just kind of combines all the different elements into it, and it's like I feel like it simultaneously is like an incredible amount of work, but within that work, there's a lot of freedom that you don't get elsewhere, perhaps.
mhm, yeah, I think so too. Like one of the biggest things when I was first getting into comics was that I was really scared of putting more than like three or four panels on a page.
Sure.
Like I found that super intimidating, like just trying to fit things in. And I think as I've gotten more used to the way like panels help narratively, like that's it's kind of been something I've been more comfortable with. And of course the character design thing is a huge part of it as well. Like I think there's just so much that you can do with comics. Like there's no real right way to do things. Like you can do whatever you want as long as it's readable in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like a lot it's different in a lot of ways from like illustration or like storyboarding even though they're both sequential. And yeah, I like that about it. It's kind of like it's still a bit wild, and you have to be kind of compulsive to be really into comics just because there's not they're just fun to read and like they're fun to make, but there's not really a lot else there, I think.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is always kind of interesting to see how differently. Like, I always really appreciate, even if I don't ultimately love the comic, when people do things like way different. And it's like you
Mhm.
can look at so many different examples. I do think it's fun. There's a lot of people I know who. I was talking to these two artists, and they like, I can't read manga. I'm like, why? And they're like, I have to read it backwards. I'm like, it's not that hard. Oh my god.
I know. Oh my gosh.
But I mean, like, you look at something like, did you read Beautiful Darkness? Like
Oh
the
yeah, I love that comic.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's just like that book is like. I think that it kind of destroyed some of the preconceived notions I had about how you approach visual or storytelling visually.
Mhm.
Or like another book I really liked that came from Nobrow. I think Beautiful Darkness was Nobrow. But did you read Nightlights by Lorena Alvarez?
I haven't.
Oh, it was really good, and it's like it's really interesting visual storytelling and like the way everything kind of combines. And I really appreciate that. It's like, there's no reason why everybody has to do things the same way, and it's like seeing
Mhm.
people who do things way different can be challenging, but at the same time ultimately rewarding both for the reader and for the creator.
Yeah, for sure.
So and now let's talk about Snotgirl for a bit. We covered the fact that you and Brian met at TCAF, but I find that to be really
Mhm.
funny given the fact that Brian is from Toronto, but you were both living in Los Angeles at the time. Like it's an amusing little
Yeah.
starting point for you guys.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of I don't really I guess I don't really know what to say about that other than yeah, it is weird for sure.
But I mean, so you guys met, presumably became friends. At what point did you decide that the two of you wanted to work together?
Brian had been wanting me to just make comics, more comics. I had been working I had I was working at a mannequin company before.
Did you
Like
say a
I was
mannequin?
yes, a mannequin company.
Okay.
Like I had to design mannequins. It was very, very boring.
Hmm.
Basically the only interesting part of my day was that I had to look at a lot of fashion blogs and like look for poses, like trendy poses and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I hated my job and I was doing like a sufficient amount of mini comic work, like small things here and there, but obviously I couldn't commit that much time to it just because I was busy as well.
Hmm.
And at the time I was like talking to Brian, getting to know him more, and then he wanted me to basically quit my job and do comics full time. And he proposed that that he could help me with a story that I'd already been working on or like anything that I had before, and then we can make a comic together that way.
Hmm.
And I just told him that we should just make something from scratch because I felt like it'd be more difficult for him to be invested in something that he didn't really have a part in.
Sure.
And that's kind of the very beginning, like origin story of Snot Girl, basically.
So, like, you were already looking at fashion blogs because the mannequin company and everything like that. But like, was that something that was already was that world kind of a fascination for you, and also the world of like kind of social media curation and kind of how we like handle our personal brands and everything? Because that's like at the root of what a lot of this is about.
Yeah, there are a couple of different things about Snot Girl that appealed to me, or like that were things that I had been thinking about a lot. The fashion blog thing I had always been interested in a way. Like I was really fascinated during college about the lives of people who they like don't disclose that much about what's going on. I think they do have to now for like legal reasons.
Hmm.
But when a lot of people were first starting out, they were just wearing like so many different types of clothing that I never even thought to put together. And it was kind of, I think that's kind of how like a lot of people get into fashion blogging in a way or become interested in influencers is because they're doing things that you never even thought that a normal person could. And social media. I think at the time I was using Instagram a ton and Twitter as well, so it was kind of getting to me like in a way. Just like people like the just the way that it can change you and the way that people interact with you because of your following or the way that people who are following you talk to you.
Hmm.
Like there were a lot of things that were going on that was kind of like that's kind of I think Snot Girl is kind of where like I funneled a lot of my thoughts into, and then Brian and I would talk about those sorts of things, and we had like similar ideas, and he obviously had problems as well, or he had experiences that I haven't had, and vice versa.
Yeah. I have to share a quick social media story that's like kind of semi related to like the Snot Girl experience. I was at a coffee shop up here in Anchorage, Alaska,
Mhm.
and I was waiting for a drink when this guy that I know walks in, and
Uh-huh.
I was like fairly close to him, and he smiles at me, and I smile at him, and he's coming up to talk to me. I think he walks directly by me and goes to talk to this other guy, and then he comes to talk to me afterwards, and he's like, "Yeah, sorry, man, I saw you there, but that guy has 70,000 followers on Instagram, so I want to talk to him first." And I was like, "Oh my god, we're not friends anymore."
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I was
Oh
like,
my
wow,
God.
I feel very unimportant right now. I need more Instagram followers.
Yeah, you need to work on your algorithm, your like engagement.
Exactly. The sad thing is, I actually work in social media for a living. I work in an advertising agency, so I should be better at
Oh
that.
my
But
God.
yeah, but you know how it is. It's like sometimes when you're like when you do something for a living, you don't always want to do that for your free time too. But anyways, that was an eye opening moment. I was like, damn. But one thing I was curious about is like you guys both live in Los Angeles. For you,
hmm
was part of like the interest in all this stuff. Did it stem from your location and where you lived?
I guess in a way, like I think for me, I was really interested in seeing these kinds of homegrown heroes in a way, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of influencers. Like I wouldn't say that, they're aspirational or that they should be aspirational, but seeing like a bunch of different types of people, obviously they're still like adhering to, typical beauty standards, but seeing a bunch of different people that typically wouldn't have been um, in any sort of public eye becoming these kinds of these like figures in which people would stop them on the street if they recognize them.
Yeah.
Seeing that happen and like growing up in very similar situation to a lot of these people, I think that's kind of why I had this affinity towards them that I don't really have towards other celebrities. And I think a lot of young people now feel the same way, where they connect more with YouTube stars or like people on Instagram than they would with just your typical movie star.
I feel like there's like the funny thing about like the social media stars and everything is like there's like this weird dichotomy there because there's like a perceived authenticity to it where it kind of comes out as
Yeah.
like this is just a normal person, but at the same time it's like because all this stuff is so curated and like all this stuff is like so set up, it's like there is an
hmm
inauthenticity to it too, and it's like it's a very fascinating dichotomy.
Yeah. And I feel like it's something that people might not want to examine, but I think it's definitely something that we want to like it's kind of the inevitability of like your authentic self and your inauthentic self being at odds, which is what we want to explore in Snotgirl. And I think that thinking that you can be online and have like millions of followers and still be like your truest self is kind of it's a bit delusional to me. Like I don't think it can work. Like
Yeah.
there's just a certain point where you want to curate that side of you and you want to put your best foot forward, and at a certain point that best foot is not really even something that you want to have out there all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean it's like at a certain point too, you start like realizing what's working and you start chasing that side of you, and it's like you become like this very kind of extreme version of yourself perhaps. It's it's like for me, like I always feel weird on Twitter because I have, not a ton of followers, but a decent amount of followers, and a lot of them are following me because of comics, but then I start tweeting about like sports or like video games, and I'm
hmm
like sometimes I'm like, man, I feel like they probably don't like this, but I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Just like ignore other parts of myself, I guess. But
yeah, I had that problem with Twitter and like Instagram. Like I used to post like a lot of different types of things on Instagram. Like it started out just being whatever I wanted.
hmm
Obviously I posted a ton of drawings, but then people would get mad at me for like going on vacation and like posting other things, and like they're like I was just here for drawings, and I would kind of be like, I don't really care what you think, but at the same time I did kind of care. But like
yeah,
I was like maybe people are only here just for that, and like that's kind of like there's no way that you can't have some level of insecurity from that. And I
sure.
think I think at the same time I was like, I'm getting older and I don't really want to put all myself out there. I don't want to be super vulnerable all the time, and like even if I am like in my normal life, and even on Twitter I don't feel super comfortable like talking about like my real life or like my real problems.
hmm
And I'm trying to get over that just because I feel like life is too short to censor yourself in that way. But I think it's also like, yeah, I think that there's a part of us that is scared that people won't like us even if they don't actually care.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally feel that. It's like I feel like quite often it's like you only share the good moments in your life on all that, and then you kind of omit the stuff that's outside the picture to a certain degree. I know that there have been some
Yeah.
super like cheesy like Instagram photos, like or like where people will take show what's on the outside of the Instagram photo, and it's all these like dark things to like dramatize what the social media effect is. But I mean, it's kind of true. I mean, it's like we kind of self edit our lives when it comes to social media.
Yeah, like it's it's definitely not healthy. Like I don't think that people should do that, but I think the compulsion is just there. Like we can't really do anything about it.
For sure. Well, so this is your first big comic project. You've kind of already alluded to this, but what is like the learning curve to tackling something like this, both from a creation and like a scheduling perspective? I know scheduling is like a big thing. It can be overwhelming.
Yeah, I've never worked with a colorist or like a letterer before, so there was a lot that I had to learn in terms of like my own work ethic and like my own workflow is that I had to take into account that I wasn't the last step before the printer. Like I wasn't my own editor anymore in a way.
Right.
I had to like think about other people's schedules and like how long it would take to color something, how long it would take to edit and like letter everything. And I think Snotgirl is a bit different from a lot of comics just because we don't have a very like regulated, streamlined workflow.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no Brian and I go back and forth a lot on a lot of different things like the script and the actual layouts and at the very end we always go through the final issue together.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of back and forth. So I do think it takes a little bit more time for us to make this comic. I don't really know if I'm actually like not sure if I could handle doing another monthly comic.
Right.
And Snotgirl's not even monthly anymore; it's bi-monthly, which I think works even better for us, just because I think we do like the serialized format in a way, but also it's super stressful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, I think I was talking to because I talked with Brian yesterday, and one of the things we talked about was
hmm
just um, I feel like to a certain degree, it's the monthly release schedule is, ideally that's a thing that could happen because that's the way it happened. But if it doesn't work for you, you got to do what's best for you and what's best for the comic. And it's like if bi-monthly is the best with like a break in between, then that's the best. Like that results in the
Yeah,
best comic book. I'd rather have that.
yeah, exactly.
So I was curious, like, do you work, on Instagram? You share a lot of traditional art, but do you work traditionally with your pencils and inks and everything on Snotcroll, or do you work digitally?
I start out digitally. I do like my roughs digitally just because it's easier to change. Like if there's things that aren't working, then I can move them around a lot easier.
Sure.
And then I print everything out. I lightbox it. I pencil it, and I ink it traditionally. So essentially, I'm drawing the same panels three times at least, if not more. Um, yeah, I feel like this is the best way for me to work just because I used to like ink on a light box and it didn't, that was like the very first issue. I tried to do one page in ink and it just didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
So immediately I was like, I'm gonna have to spend more time on this, but also it's gonna look better and like be easier in the end.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that gets back to like the what we were talking about with the art school. It's like ultimately you have to find what works best for you. And like I've
Exactly.
talked to so many different artists, and every single one of them seemingly works a different way. And it's
Mhm.
because like you could try to draw like I don't know, like Jeff Darrow or Inu Asano or something like that, and then you would kill
Yeah.
yourself, and it would be horrible. And
Mhm.
or you could just find what works best for you, and it's like whatever is most comfortable, because what's odds are like what's most comfortable for you is probably going to be what ends up working the best for the book itself.
Yeah, and you're working at such a high rate and like putting out so many pages that if it's not comfortable for you and it's not like the easiest way for you to draw, then it's really not worth it just because you're going to be like killing yourself anyway, just because it's like at a certain point I'm like, oh God, I like can't even make a line even if I tried.
Yeah.
And it has to be like what comes most easiest to me. Like my hand needs to feel like less strained.
Well, so when it comes to layouts, do you when it comes to laying out the page and everything like that, do you figure that out? Do you get like a script from Brian? Or it sounds like you guys kind of work collaboratively to a certain degree, both on the script and on layouts. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. For scripts, often Brian will send me kind of like the rough skeleton, and then we'll like work out the plot points, what we want in the issue and what we don't want. Then he'll send me the actual script. I'll like if I find parts of it that I don't like or I think I could add more to pump it up, then I will do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then from his script, I will make thumbnails and then I'll do roughs. He'll look at my roughs and like if things aren't reading well, he'll help fix things like move things around for clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's kind of just when I go into pencils and inks.
Okay. Yeah.
And, yeah, and usually he ends up going back and like rewriting the whole thing.
Yeah, he said that he did that kind of on like the lettering run, but um, do you feel like your process or like just kind of how you approach things has evolved as you because you're like 10 issues in, it's like your first big project,
Hmm.
it's a, monthly slash bi-monthly book. Like have you evolved your process like as you moved along?
I think I have gotten faster overall. I think since the first issue, it's more or less been the same. I've changed like pens and and brushes over the course of the current run.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've settled on what works for me. Like I mostly work with nibs and brushes, and before that, I was only doing brushes.
Mm.
Um, and I might have changed my ink, but I don't know. That's about it, though. I think been it's been more. I've found my pace, and like I really know what works.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know how to set things up, and I know to do things at a certain time, and that's helped a lot. Like just scheduling wise, like I've been able to schedule a lot easier.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of the artists I know who are like very efficient, it's just like it really kind of comes down to it's like you're not really changing the process of how you do things. It's maybe like you're changing the process of how you schedule how you do things, which,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like instead of being really frantic and be like, oh my God, what do I do next? Like I'm like, okay, I have like X amount of time to do this task and then like I'll move on to the next task. Like just giving myself the time and like to be able to do things and like knowing when to do them has helped a lot.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask about the colorist on the book because when you first started, Mickey Quinn was on it. Now it's Rachel Cohen.
Hmm.
I feel like the colorists on this book are super important because, if only because the fact that Lottie has like green hair and that's so important, and you have constantly changing fashion because they're fashion bloggers.
Yeah.
What do you think that they brought to or bring to the book to bring the best out of it?
Well, I guess Rachel was the flatter on the first five issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Mickey couldn't work on the book anymore, she asked if she could do the colors. And I think they do bring a lot. Like the book is obviously meant to be in color. I think if people just saw like the raw pages, they'd be like, "What is going on? Like, what is this?" So they've definitely brought a lot. I love being able to work closely with them to kind of like bring more of the story to life. And it I think it's a unique thing in comics. Like there's not I feel like trying to bring like a more artistic palette to comics is something that I've been interested in for
Yeah.
sure.
I feel like the name of the first volume probably would have made a lot less sense if it was in black and white.
Oh yeah, of course.
No, I mean, I actually, I'm trying to find this page. I sent an email. I'm a big nerd, and when I read like comics, I actually take pictures of them and send myself pictures so I can look at them later. But there's this one, I don't know, there's some very interesting stuff that you guys do in terms of like kind of, there was this one specific panel where it was um, it was kind of, there was almost like a opaque black layer over the panel, and it was just done, kind of changing the mood and everything like that, and the lettering was actually done for the thoughts were done directly over the panel as opposed to like in a thought bubble
Hmm.
or in a specific place, and it was so good at affecting the mood, and it was just such a like I feel like it was such an amazing microcosm of everybody on the team really killing it. And it's funny because I feel like I
Hmm.
might be like the only person who was like, yes, killed it. That's amazing. I wish I actually had that on me. Sorry, I'm using an example I don't have really good proof of, but it's fantastic. Um, Brian actually mentioned that when you guys go through your last run, he said that you give tremendous notes on colors and like you really help like bring that all together. Like, so what is that? What do you particularly look through or look for when you're looking through the pages after when you're doing that process?
It's really it's I don't know if it's normal, but I feel like I like to art direct the pages a bit. Like usually when I'm scanning them, I that's it's the last thing I want to do is to look at the pages I've been working on.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I've been looking at them for so long. But oftentimes I'm like looking. By the time I've finished inking an issue, I've already thought about and looked at the script like a million times over,
Mm-hmm.
and there are a lot of different kind of there are some parts that I defer just to Rachel. Like I'm like just make it like basic colors, like normal colors, and then there are a lot of times where I'm like make it like make it like a film or like make it like dramatic and like I'll have a bunch of examples of what I'm looking for in colors and then she'll have to interpret that some way or another. I'm trying to be very specific
Mm-hmm.
in my notes. Like I'm not trying to be purposefully like obscure or anything. But yeah, there are a lot of notes. It's very complicated and Brian's always like, I don't even want to see what you're saying. Like I don't even want to know what's going on in there. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty involved.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense that you would want to be pretty specific because it's like if you're just giving like vague kind of like emotional statements to them, it's just like, this just feels like confidence, and they're like, what do I do with that?
I know it's so bad. Like I personally would hate to get notes that are very vague. It's easier to be more specific than less specific for sure. And I feel like that usually ends up going back like a couple of times, like maybe two, maybe three times, and then that's usually when I'm happy with the colors. Like there are a lot of times where I've been really surprised at how good they've turned out.
Obviously, with a book centered around fashion bloggers, you're gonna have to do a ton of work to like constantly give these characters new looks and styles. I'm kind of curious, like when did you kind of fill out like the looks for Lottie and Caroline and Misty and Meg before you jumped into the book? Like, did you like have a pretty good idea, or even like outfits picked out for each of them for like the first little while, or has a lot of it been figuring out things as you've been going issue to issue?
I well, they were already kind of their styles were already figured out by the time it started. Like I had very specific ideas of what cute girl and like norm girl and what Snotty would wear, but I didn't have the actual outfits. Like a lot of it has been me trying to figure it out before I start laying
Hmm.
out the issue, just because it's super hard for me to draw the characters if I don't know what they're wearing sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like I've gotten to know the characters enough where there are times where I'll have to look for inspiration. Like I'll be like on blogs or like looking at like online stores and things like that just to figure out what they could wear and what they would gravitate towards. And I think that's it's kind of fun, but also like really stressful in a lot of ways because sometimes you just have to like go with your gut and go with something that's not exactly fashionable, but will look good in a drawing and could conceivably be something a fashion blogger would wear.
Yeah. No, I imagine it would be pretty difficult to like jump in randomly and try to create these outfits when like it'd be one thing if you were drawing like I don't know, the X-Men or something like that. Like they're not designed to like be fashionistas or anything like that. But if Lottie is wearing something like I even like the part I especially like the part in the first volume where they go to the coffee shop and she's just like they're trying to be incognito
Oh
and of
yeah.
course cute girl is dressed up like to the nines like she normally is, but Lottie is wearing her like just like kind of her dress down clothes, and cute girl like throws in her face. She's like, "You're wearing your own line anyways."
Yeah, I love doing stuff like that just because I feel like we have a blind spot towards what we do ourselves and like I always find like interactions like that funny in comics.
Yeah, it was
Like
great.
when yeah, like roasting your friends is definitely a real thing.
I feel like their entire relationship is based around roasting each other. The Haters Club, that is.
Yeah, of course.
And brunch and waiting in lines at brunch, which is something I brought up to Brian. I was like, I can't believe that there's any people in the world who actually like waiting in lines for brunch.
There are a lot of people that will just be like, "Oh, it's a line. What is it for? I'll just go wait in this line." Like, why? Why would you do that? It just doesn't make any sense to any like it's not conducive to anything.
No, no. I did that one time. I'm not gonna lie. I was my friend and I were driving by like back in the day. I don't know if you ever lived anywhere that had a CompUSA, but this was like 15
Oh
years ago or
yeah.
something. And there was like this massive line outside of it. And my friend and I were big like nerds, and we were like, "What is this line for?" And we're like, "What if it's like looting? What if we're going to get stuff for free? This is awesome." So we went there, and it turns out they were having like a 60% off sale because they were going out of business. We're like, "All right, let's buy some
Oh my
stuff."
God.
Yeah.
That's so funny that you guys are like, what if they're looting? Let's wait in line to loot the store.
It's a very, Alaska's very friendly. We're all very, even though we're doing criminal acts, we're still trying to be very like thoughtful about it.
Yeah, you'll queue properly, like instead of like trying to get in front of everyone else.
Exactly. I do want to say, not that it's that big of a deal, but I did find that panel I was talking about. It's actually in that scene in the coffee shop where Lottie's wearing her own line and she runs into Sunny and he says,
Oh
"Hey," and it
yeah.
says, "I try to speak, but there's no air." It is such a great moment. I don't know why that moment stood out so much to me, but good job.
I love all of Sunny and Lottie's like really weird, awkward interactions.
Which is pretty much all of them.
Yeah, they're really bad. They don't know how to talk to each other.
I do also want to compliment you. Your hair work is incredible. I appreciate a good head of hair, and you kill it on everyone all the time.
Thank you. I think that's probably half of why Brian wanted to work with me in the first place was because he really liked the way I draw girls and hair.
Mm.
He's like, let's make a comic about hot girls. And that's it.
So I did want I was curious like when it comes to the fashion side of the thing, you obviously are trying to stay on top of everything. You're trying to pay attention to what's going on with fashion blogs, everything like that. Is that part of the equation for the comic? Is that challenging, or is it more on like the fun side of the spectrum? Like is that something you really enjoy?
Oh, I've always liked fashion. I feel like it was one of the reasons why I like drawing is that there's this kind of escapist um part of it. Like there's
Hmm.
like an escapist aspect just because I would always look at fashion magazines as a teen and like it's just out of like completely out of my range. Like there was no like it's unrealistic and there's no way I was gonna wear any of these clothes, but I just loved the way they looked.
Hmm.
And I think I have a very fraught relationship with fashion. Like I think I have so many thoughts about it, like in terms of drawing fashion and fashion in real life, and then people are just like, "Stop talking, like this is not interesting." But yeah, it's like it's a challenging but very like it's essential part of the book. Like I wouldn't want to do any book where there's not like at least some um well dressed or like well fitted outfit. Like I think I would just be miserable doing a normal book where they're like, yeah, people are just wearing like joggers and like t-shirts all the time. I would hate that.
No, understandably. I think it is I feel like the people have a very weird relationship with clothes. Like for me in
Hmm.
particular, like I always tell people that I hate shopping, but I think I've come to realize at my age of 34 that the reason why I hate shopping is like because I actually secretly really love clothes, and if I go shopping, I'm gonna want to try on everything, and I'm gonna want to like buy
Yeah.
everything, and then I can't afford it, and I'm gonna be very upset. And so it's like I have this like extreme love hate relationship with clothes, and I feel like that's kind of like a common thing for people.
Yeah, I definitely go back and forth where I'm like I don't want to look at clothes at all and then sometimes I'm like I really want to try everything on and like and just be sad or like I'll go into a store with kind of blinders on. I'm like I'm just going to go in for this one thing I need and like get out of there. But yeah, I definitely love shopping. It's a problem. I've been trying to like cull my closet, like clean it out, and every time I think I'm done, there's like more and more. I'm just like I don't know how this happened. I don't even know how I have this many clothes.
Hmm.
It's a problem.
This is a random TCAF question, but I feel like comic creators are becoming more well dressed. Was TCAF a well dressed Comic Con?
Um,
Yeah.
it's all right. Like there's a lot of people wearing denim jackets, including me, just because it was cold. Um,
That's
yeah,
understandable.
I think it's okay. I think it's definitely better than than most. Like I will see people wearing not just t-shirts and blazers, which I think is what I associate with a lot of comic shows.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's easy to be comfortable, and I totally get not being able to like travel with your whole wardrobe.
Yeah, that's true. I actually one of my favorite people in comics is James Lucas Jones. He's the guy who's like the publisher at Oni Press. He actually
Hmm.
brought like a suitcase. I'm pretty sure it was entirely filled with shoes that he wanted to wear, and it was just like because he's like a
Oh my
total
gosh.
sneakerhead, and I'm like, oh my god, that's so awesome. That's pretty great. He was also coming from Portland to Seattle, so I don't think he had to like fly or anything, but that certainly made it easier. But I think that's great. But I wanted to ask about your character work because that's one thing that I really love about the book. Like every character feels like
Hmm.
they have their own identity. They feel like they're really alive. Like I really enjoy Cute Girl because she kind of feels like a manga character within Snotgirl to a certain degree. But also you do
Yeah.
such a good job of capturing the kind of looks I expect from fashion bloggers on Instagram. Like there's that one shot when Lottie and the rest were coming back from the funeral for the dog, and she like takes this picture where she just looks like it's like the perfect picture, and I feel like I've seen that picture before. Like, what is the key for you to bring all these characters to life so well?
I never really thought that I was a good character designer. Like, I feel like compared to a lot of other people, I've always felt like a little bit insecure about it in a way. But I really like drawing people. Like, I feel like drawing human interaction and people's expressions is something that I really like doing, even if I don't know, even if I'm not the best at it all the time. It's something that I really focus on and like to pay attention to, and I love character acting and I like all those sorts of things. So, to me, the characters in Snotgirl are very alive to me at this point. Like they've kind of been characters I've been working with and like working on for almost 3 years now, or 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Um, and they all move and they look a certain way, and I feel like it's I like did not even know that people were going to think that Snotgirl was even remotely a decent character design. I thought it was just going to be like, I don't really know, like I didn't know what to expect at all. So it's really great to hear people thinking that it's naturalistic, or that they really really buy into the character and they can really feel like a lot of her different emotions, and like and also appreciate how hard she works on her Instagram.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a it's a tough thing to do, because it's like I feel like sometimes when you try to do character acting where it's like you're trying to bring this person to life, it's like you can almost go too far and make the person feel cartoonish
Mhm.
to a degree. And like,
Yeah.
with Cute Girl, obviously that's like a feature. But I mean, with everybody else, like I really feel like I don't know, it feels like you really understand these characters. Like if somebody else drew them, you'd be like, this is a really great piece, but Lottie wouldn't wear that. And
Yeah, I'm very guilty of doing that. Um, yeah, I there are just certain things that I feel like the characters themselves, like at this point, like they're almost dictating what they're wearing to me. Like
that's
I
awesome.
can look at something and I'd be like, that's not something that Meg would wear. That's not something that Lottie would wear, or like Misty even. And I think I feel like I don't know, it's like it's interesting. I feel like a lot of people should have a better relationship with the characters if they want to be able to be better about that. Like knowing like certain things about your characters is very important, but being able to answer questions about your characters is probably even more so,
Hmm.
in terms of making a comic. I think if someone asks like, oh, how would your character feel in like this certain situation, you should be able to answer. And I think that that's part of why um, characters either resonate or they don't with certain people.
I'm not gonna lie, this has totally set me up to ask you a bunch of questions about situational what costumes for each of these characters. Like, what would Lottie wear to or a cocktail party or something like that?
Oh my gosh. Well, she would obviously be overdressed and like uncomfortable.
uh, no, I'm kind of curious. Do you have like I don't know. I feel like this is a really cheesy phrase to use, but like almost like vision boards set up for these characters and like what they could possibly wear, or like outfits like if you see an outfit, like do you have like a formal process for like I'm gonna put this in like a Lottie file, like something that she could possibly be wearing in the future?
Oh yeah, I have folders for everyone. The problem is I don't really look at them. I
Oh,
like I save like a bunch of things all the time, and I will look at things, and then some of them stick more in my head than others. But a lot of the time I'm like I don't like to copy outfits directly,
mm,
and I feel like sometimes it can be a little bit too obviously like ripped from Instagram or something,
sure.
which I'm not super crazy about, but I mean, it happens. It's like that's just what happens with fast fashion. Like a lot of people are wearing a lot of different things all the time. But for the most part, I'm trying to like look at things and like remember them, and then like try to like chop and screw them specifically for the book and like specifically for different types of situations.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I do have tons of not drawings. I have tons of photos saved, and I look at them sometimes, but a lot of time I'm like, no, I can't look too much. It's like it's influencing my brain too much.
Well, it seems more like it's like you're looking at it for like subconscious inspiration. It's like you're not going to steal that dress entirely, but it's like maybe I like this
Yeah.
element of it, or maybe like this, this feel is kind of what I'm going for. Because that's the thing is for a lot of people. photo reference. I'm not saying you're doing photo reference at all, but I mean, people look at looking at photos or like recreating certain poses so they can, try to bring it to life themselves. It's like that's like a
Hmm.
dirty thing to do in art for some people, but at the same time, it's like you're just trying to find a way to bring these characters to life in the most realistic fashion. And for characters like
Yeah.
this, if you just had them wearing, I don't know what like a random person on the street is wearing, it wouldn't be cute girl or it wouldn't be norm girl. It's just that's
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. I definitely go more crazy with cute girl just because I think that she would be able to somehow like gravity defying hats and like different types of things that normal people wouldn't wear, and she would just find a way to incorporate them into her everyday life somehow.
If she made an eye patch work, I think she can make anything work.
It's true.
I have to tell you, the last thing I want to say about Snot Girl is I got to give you credit. Like when Snot Girl was first announced, like that first picture grossed me out. Like I was like not entirely. I was like, I don't know if I can hang with this because like you guys were legit gross. Um, but like I feel like that was something you were going for. Like was like I know this is kind of a weird question, but was grossness an aim for you when it came to like Lottie's allergic reaction? Is that something you really wanted to underline?
It's kind of funny because Brian and I basically came up with Snot Girl because we're a bit neurotic and we have our issues, and also we have allergies.
Right.
Um, and we didn't even want to call it Snot Girl in the beginning. Brian was like, "Can we find a better name?" But I just kept calling her that, and it just stuck. And after a while, it was like I got so desensitized to it, like it didn't even seem gross to me. And when we announced the comics, people were like, "Oh, what's wrong with you guys? Like, why would you call it that? Like, it's so disgusting." And I was like, "Oh my God, people don't like this name, Snot Girl." Like, it was it was like kind of like shocking to me just because I had been working on it for so long, and I had no idea. Um, I mean, allergies are gross. Like it's like it's absolutely disgusting. I feel like our bodies are pretty gross, just as is. Like even the most normal body is disgusting to me.
Fair statement.
um, yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, now I kind of think it's a little bit punk rock because it's like no one people still don't like the name. Um,
I don't mind the name. It was like, well, the funny thing about it is like the first thing I saw I think was like your guys is like that poster you had for Image
yeah.
Expo, which I actually like. I think that's a tremendous piece of art, and it's kind of funny because it doesn't feel like exactly the same style you're using in the book. It feels a little bit more rough.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and it was funny because like I was like super attracted to like the style of art and what you were doing, but I was like, ugh, but the snot, but the snot girl name never bothered me. That wasn't something that got me. I was just like, I don't know. It'd be kind of like if I read a comic that was really great about spiders. I'm like deeply horrified of spiders. I don't think I could
Oh
do that
yeah.
even if it was really great.
Yeah, I mean it's like being like I'm afraid of spiders and I won't read Spider-Man because of it. I mean like snot is obviously like kind of just it's like an undercurrent, but it's a lot more than that in Snot Girl, which is why I think if people can get past the name and past like the imagery, then you're kind of like you're also in it with me. Now you don't even think it's that gross. Like it's upon initial like when you see it for the first time, you're like, what? Why? But I feel like the people that get it, they do get
Oh yeah, I mean clearly I'm amongst the initiated because I like can talk about it encyclopedically at this point. But initially I was just like, I don't know about this. This is gross.
it.
Um, so I want to close by talking about a commonality between us. You're not just a podcast host or guest; you're also a podcast co-host, as you and Sloan Leong host a podcast called Salt and Honey, where you talk about everything from comics reading and creation to you guys talk about like the MCU and Annihilation, and you've interviewed people. You seem like a pretty busy person in general. I'm curious, like, why did you guys decide that you wanted to go down that podcast path?
I don't remember why. I feel like Sloan was like, "Hey, I have like Adobe Premiere now, and what can we do with that?" And I was like, "Make a podcast," because I'm like getting really into podcasts. Like all I listen to when I work is basically podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I think we have some stuff to say, like maybe not that much, but we can do a podcast. And that's kind of how it started. We're really bad at uploading though, which is why I think, I mean, that's what happens. Like you're busy and there's things happen. So you don't, you're, I'm really bad at finding time to do it, but I still enjoy it.
Yeah. No, I mean it seemed like you guys have obviously like great rapport, and it's fun like listening to people who are clearly friends like talking about
Mhm.
a wide variety of subjects. And it's funny because like I do this podcast, and I have one of my like best friends that I go get breakfast with like every couple weeks or something like that, and we just have these conversations where we'll start talking about like a sci-fi movie, and then somehow we're talking about like the Electoral College or like this random stuff. And it's like I always feel like trying to capture the magic of those random friend conversations is something that I'd like to see more of from or hear more of from podcasts. And you guys do it really well. I mean, I think it's great. It's just funny because it's like I feel like a lot of people who make comics are kind of like low key workaholics. And I'm always
Mhm.
amused when people are like, I'm going to keep doing more and more stuff. So I was impressed when you guys decided to do that on top of your comics work.
Well, I'm glad you like it. I always feel like I'm not doing anything, actually. When people are like, "You seem really busy," I'm like, not really. I don't know. It's probably just another personality flaw, I'm sure, where I'm like, "Oh yeah, I didn't do anything," and I'm like trying to make comics at the same time, which is, those are very different things. Doing nothing and making comics are just, it's the opposite.
Yeah. No, I always I kind of feel like that's sometimes that's just the way that we feel about ourselves because I had somebody when I shared you actually retweeted it was a tweet about like my 5 next guests that are coming on the show, and it's like a great
Mhm.
list of people that I was very happy to have. And this one comic colorist Jordy Belair tweeted me, she's like, you're one of the hardest working people I know. And I was like, man, I don't know. I always feel like a slacker. Like I'm like I should play less video games. Like I'd get more done that way.
I know. I'm like, I need to stop playing so much like PlayStation. I need to like stop watching Netflix. And then people are like, you do so much. I'm like, oh, no, maybe. Who knows? It's really hard to say.
I did want to say I actually because I always do read previous interviews with people when I'm doing research. I did read that apparently you're a huge fan of bad reality shows, and that's a time sink.
Yeah, for sure. You just get sucked in and you can't stop watching. And Netflix makes it really bad because like, or Hulu's like that too. It's you can just keep with the Kardashians for like hours and not even realize it.
Yeah. Have you watched that arranged marriage show?
I watch it sometimes. I usually see it on TV when I'm at like conventions.
Yeah.
I feel like it's when I get like my most like varied range of like weird shows that I watch normally. Yeah, I did watch it. I was watching one and I got really scared.
I'm trying to remember what is the name of the show anyways. Like my friend
Is it
watches
like
it. Married at
is it
First
like
Sight.
90 Day Fiance?
Married at
Or
First
wait,
Sight. There must be a
okay,
bunch
there's
of
Married
them.
at First Sight and there's 90 Day Fiance, which is I think you have to like not break up. I don't really know what that show's about. Married at First Sight is really terrifying to me.
It like my friend who's like loves reality shows, like she was telling me about it, and I'm just like, that seems like horrible. Like that seems like a very high variance experience. And like, I don't know, do you get things out of it? Like, do you get money if you succeed at marriage? I don't really know how this works, but
I think you get married.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess
I think
that's the benefit ultimately.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I always wonder. I'm sure that they get money for it, but I feel like the main thing is that they get married, which is kind of like it's a lot. I don't really know if I think that's why I'm so fascinated because I don't really know why people go on those types of shows.
Yeah, it's like a
Other
super
than
aggressive version of eHarmony.
yeah, for sure. Like, and you have to do all these embarrassing things in front of like an audience of probably like millions. Yeah, I don't know.
I have
It's
to admit,
interesting.
I always wanted. There was like some reality shows that I kind of wanted to be on. Like I would love to be on The Amazing Race just so I could travel. But like it in itself is not that interesting of a show because most of the challenges are super easy. But I'm like, I'd like to go around the world. That seems like a fun way to spend my time. That seems good.
Yeah, it does seem good, and then like the actual logistics of it, I'm like, I don't know if I can handle that. I always think that I could be on Big Brother or like I used to watch a lot of Big Brother or like I don't know if you know it, but like Terrace House, the Japanese reality show.
I've heard about it. I don't
Um,
really know what it is though.
it's kind of like the real world, but even less involved. Like they don't give you jobs because on the real world, I think they gave them jobs and on Jersey Shore as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like week by week. You just follow a bunch of people in a house, and that is definitely an unexpected. very interesting show to watch if you're interested.
I will check it out. No, I always liked Real World when especially like when it was the '90s and everything like that. But
Oh
I
yeah.
always thought it was really funny that they would give them jobs. Like it was like MTV was trying to really instill upon these people that they have to be responsible adults while they're doing this like tomfoolery constantly.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and they're living in like a disgusting house with like a bunch of strangers. In your early 20s is definitely not the most productive time, I'm sure.
For sure. Anyways, I could talk about this stuff all day long, but Leslie, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on. This was super fun.
Yay, I'm glad. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with artist Leslie Hung. You can find Leslie on Twitter at Leslie Hung, on Instagram at dairyfree, on Tumblr at milkmanor.tumblr.com, and her work in Snotgirl Image Comics. If you're a fan of the show, check out the show on Patreon at patreon.com/offpanel. If you back the show on Patreon, you not only support the show, but you get early access to each week's podcast, access to exclusive written and audio content, and more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating and review while you're at it. You can find the show on social media as well. Like the show on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD, followed on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Owen McCready, Brendan Fletcher, Michael Garland, Mabrind, Nick, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, David, Jason Assey, Mike Gillis, Adam Bogert, Xavier Files, Maria Schweitzer, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Dan Guarino, Dan Lee, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Brian McRae, Ira James Udaskin, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Abraham Reisman, Adrian Diaz, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendricks, Steve Anderson, Michael Perlman, Phil Nall, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Christopher Carter, Nicholas Kesslick, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Highfield, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. Quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from the album Volmilch opens and closes the show. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.